Honourable Nanaia Mahuta.
Ka tika me tū ki te tāpiri atu āku kōrero tuatahi te whare nei mo tēnei tau ki era I waihotia a te minita. Rātau kua wehe atu, aua ingoa kua whakahuahua mai ki roto ki tēnei whare. Tēnei anō ka whakatakoto tērā ingo o te kuia ki Taranaki ara Mere Broughton, ki tērā ki Ngaitahu ki a Linda Grinnell. E koe ware tia rātou katoa. Ko hipa ki tō te ārai, ko te tūmanako, kia whai whakaro ki ngā whānau pani I noho I raro I te kapua pauri. Nō reire e te hoa, e rāhui, tēnei te mihi atu ki a koe me tō whānau kei rungi te marae o Pōhara. Nō reira, tēnā tātou katoa. Mr. Speaker, for those listening to the debate, they could be forgiven for being really concerned about what the year holds ahead of them. The tone of the Prime Minister's statement was reiterated at the first political meeting, which many of us turned up to at Rātana. He was dismissive, defensive, and an 8-year creep of arrogance in the tone of his presentation there to issues regarding the TPPA. But more significantly, if in the last 8 years prosperity has been seen throughout many communities in this country, why is it that the Prime Minister did not mention the growing rates of inequality and poverty? At the hui at Waitangi, well, it was the Prime Minister's decision not to turn up, and for whatever reason that was the case. But when we talk about the sovereignty of New Zealand and what is important to us as a country, there's no better place than Waitangi to actually demonstrate that New Zealand has moved on. And yes, Waitangi is a symbol of where our nationhood began, but it's also a place where we can say, as a parliament, New Zealand has moved on in its thinking about that partnership relationship. However, that has not been the case simply by the way that the Prime Minister has treated that whole discourse about sovereignty and the treaty. I'm really concerned because the tone of the Prime Minister's statement has not provided the level of balance that is required and is deserving to all New Zealanders. On the one hand, the promotion of a growing economy and the lowering of an unemployment rate, yet the reality in many communities, very difficult to find a job and hold a job beyond 90 days. Growing youth unemployment. The issues around the TPPA are significant and cannot simply be dismissed as a group of Māoris protesting. In fact, on February the 4th, over 20,000 people rocked up to say that they weren't happy with a process that the government had undertaken which diminished any sense of public consultation or information, and it was only at the last minute, at the end of last year, that the documents were released. The national interest test will be debated before the Select Committee, but those people who turned up to protest were nurses, they were doctors, they were workers, they were grandparents and parents, they were teachers, they were academics, they were employers. They weren't just a bunch of Māori who are unhappy about the treaty, and it was wrong of the Minister of Education to actually try and classify and diminish the broad-ranging interest and concern around the TPP. And this is why it matters. This is why the concerns about the process matters and how New Zealanders will ultimately judge whether or not the government is acting in its best interest. Why is it okay to spend $26 million in consulting on a flag, but not a trade agreement as significant as the TPP? It's not okay. The process will matter when many New Zealanders walk towards 2017, because if you have a government that rides roughshod over the interests of New Zealand, that spells trouble, because it is blatant, dismissive treatment of legitimate concerns of a broad range of New Zealanders who are just saying, look, we need to know how this agreement affects us. For the Māori sentiment, yes, there is a treaty clause in there. Yes, it is based on the China Free Trade Agreement. But, for example, when the Minister talked about these young children learning about Manuka honey and all the benefits of it, the pharmaceutical benefits, I ask her this: Will the intellectual Indigenous property rights of Māori be protected through that treaty clause? Will Mātauranga Māori be protected through that treaty clause? Can Stephen Joyce quantify what the benefit to the Māori economy is? Because even if you talk to Māori who are actively involved in exporting, what they will tell you is many of their relationships with Korea, take ginseng and the production of that from a small business in Maniapoto, what they will tell you is that that benefit was really forged on a relationship. And it took a lot of hard work. And simply by saying the reduction of tariffs will deliver to the Māori economy is, again, not a full truth. So the government needs to be accountable if it's to convince New Zealanders that this TPP will deliver the types of benefits that they're happy to promote in a very glib way in a public forum, but when you drill down to the detail, exactly explaining it and how that happens, very, very difficult. Very, very difficult. Mr. Speaker, I'm really concerned about the way in which the government is treating New Zealanders through poor process. But it doesn't stop with the TPP. Take, for example, the Minister of Māori Affairs outlining some of the key issues ahead of the government that they're wanting to put through, the ture whenua Māori. Now, if this was such a good process, why is it that Māori have had to take the government to the Waitangi Tribunal and hold them accountable on, again, another poor process? And being totally dismissive of concerns of Māori landowners with regards to what the impact of that law will have on Māori landowners, on the Māori Land Court, and on a many range of issues that affect those Māori landowners. Poor process. Another poor process. Again, in the domain of the Minister of Māori Development, the Te Reo Māori Bill. Well, he didn't start that bill. And to some extent, he could have had a way out, but he persevered. That's his choice. But the poor process has meant that through a prolonged effort of trying to promote something that all Māori would want to do, which is preserve and uphold Te Reo Māori, you've got a mixed mash of a process. He's badly handled this. Water. Now, I was at Waitangi and heard a number of interests from the iwi leaders group with regards to how they thought they were acting in good faith with ministers in progressing an agenda which at its forefront challenged the first in, first served consenting regime. And underpinning some of the Māori concerns is actually the first allocation should be back to the environment, back to the water system. They worked with farmers and with all users. The ministers gave many undertakings of what they would do, yet didn't deliver. So here is a government that has a poor process on the TPP, ture whenua Māori, te reo Māori, water reform, some significant issues in this year. But Labour wants to look to the future because it's important. We don't want a future of indebtedness. We want to tackle the issues of inequality and poverty. I'm really pleased with our Working Futures plan, which sets out and opens up the pipeline and the horizon for a number of young people that says the first 3 years of tertiary education will be free. It will provide a range of opportunities to those young people who never ever thought that post-secondary school education would ever be achievable and affordable. The minister glibly got up and said that so much was being achieved in the education space. She omitted to address the issues of those young people not in education, employment and training, significant numbers. And that's the hardest group to get to. This policy, which Labour has alongside the rest of the pipeline of educational opportunity, looks at challenging how we invest in that next generation to lift their skills, invest in their opportunity, open up their pathways to education and training so that they can participate in a modern economy. Andrew Little did well when he promoted this because he said we're not afraid to tackle this head on. We're not afraid to change priorities, and we believe that investing in the next generation will be a signature of the next Labour government. Kia ora.